Good day all. My name is Fatima Newman and I'm the Group Chief Risk Officer for EOH. I was appointed to head up the forensic investigation for EOH in 2019 by the Group CEO Stephen van Coller amidst a tumultuous time. As one of the largest ICT organizations in South Africa, EOH had gone from being the darling of the stock market to being a company fraught with allegations of corruption and mismanagement. Today I'm excited to share with you the journey we undertook as a leadership team and as a company to tackle the legacy corruption issues and deal with the perpetrators of wrongdoing in order to be able to save the jobs of the over 11,000 people and ensure that EOH became a strong and ethical corporate citizen and an example for corporate South Africa in the fight against corruption. As signatories of the UNGC, the new EOH leadership team is proud to uphold the principles in the Charter, and we remain committed to the efforts in removing the scourge of corruption in the world. In this case study, you'll hear about the journey we undertook, our approach to stakeholder management, and the difficult leadership decisions we had to take along the way. I'd like to thank everyone who agreed to participate in the videos that form part of this case study. The commitment to our journey and our efforts to eradicate corruption within EOH are greatly appreciated. Finally, we will share with you how this 3-year journey has taught us many lessons and created a foundation for the new leadership team, our EOH people, and our many stakeholders to focus on growth and opportunities. Our CEO, Stephen van Coller, shares his view on the journey we undertook and provides details on what happened during those difficult times.
I first became aware of the corruption issues when a whistleblower went to the newspapers and they published an article in February of 2019, and when I looked at it, very quickly we realized that what the whistleblower was saying was largely true. The problem was that we had to react incredibly quickly because it was now absolutely in the public domain, and EOH previously had had some negative press around some of these issues, but somehow had managed to squash them up until then. Well, the first thing was I needed to get all the information, and so we did 2 things. Firstly, I went out to the various businesses that were implicated to see what was going on, and I very quickly found an email trail of the businesses complaining to head office that there was a problem with that specific deal. And when I interviewed the people, there was clearly a problem. So what I did was I went to ENS, who were already involved in looking at 1 or 2 issues for us, and gave them an absolute open mandate to have a look at every single large public sector deal we had done since I think about 2015. And that's when we started to see this train, or this small group of people at head office were using some of their positions of power to obviously win contracts. The 2 most important things, I realized very quickly that EOH was very systemic to South Africa Inc. We were in the middle of most financial institutions. We were in the middle of 2 or 3 of our largest metros, and if we just disappeared, there would be some systemic issues in South Africa. So the first thing was to have a look at our stakeholders and say to them, what do you want me to do? So we went to National Treasury, we went to CETA, we went to BLSA. The second thing was EOH employed over 11,000 people, excluding contractors. And I just realized that 99% of people are actually honest. They want to come to work, do a proper day's job, look after their family and go home. And it was a small group of people who were actually ruining it for everyone. So saving jobs was absolutely imperative. So I had to go from there to all our customers and say to our customers, this is what I propose to do. If I do this, will you still remain a customer of us and keep our business in place? And history tells us that that was exactly the right thing to do, being totally transparent, being open, and actually working with our stakeholders to get the right result of saving as many jobs as possible. Well, what we did, and this was really one of the best board decisions, because we really debated what we should do, because at one point we really didn't know what the outcome was going to be. But in that board debate, we decided that we would split the running of the company from the actual investigation. And so ENS Africa got this unfettered access to all our books and records and email servers and everything. And I was almost excluded from it other than the reporting back, and that was always a board subcommittee. And in that way I could run the business, but the investigation could go ahead unfettered, and we could be totally transparent about it, because there was no way I could interfere with it. And that's really what we've done. You would have seen at the Zondo Commission, I gave a general view on what was happening at EOH, but ENS Africa gave the actual specifics. And we've done that in every instance where there's been an investigation. We leave it to ENS Africa to give the detail, because I was never in the detail. I was really trying to save the business with our customers, with our stakeholders, to make sure we could keep the jobs alive. Well, what's interesting, there's a big cliche, always hire people better than you. But in our situation, I really didn't have a choice, because I needed the best people in each of their various guises or their various roles, because I just didn't have time to be a bossy boss. I really had to let them do their stuff, and I needed to have the best of the best so that I didn't have to look over my shoulder all the time. And in hindsight, it was really the best outcome, because we've ended up with an amazing business. We've actually been able to package some of our solutions around governance, risk and control, and we're busy selling those solutions at the moment. And that's really been fantastic to see how a group of really capable people can actually go ahead in parallel rather than in series, and you get a great outcome. We had to move fast. That was the only way to get it done in such a short period of time. That's a very, very difficult balance. I suppose when you have a purpose, like save jobs, it makes it a little bit easier, because you don't focus on your issues, you focus on saving the jobs and other people's issues. And we've seen that has been one of the best outcomes. I've had so many emails from staff saying, thank you for saving our family, because through COVID and everything, a lot of people had 2 or 3 or 4 people working in a house. Today they have 1, and it's the EOH job that got saved. Yes, there were some jobs lost, but at the end of the day, we had to do the best for the majority. And so what I tried to do is I tried to outsource a lot of things. Don't take it on your shoulders and try and sort it all out yourself. Get the best people, like the Martin Kingstons, like the ENS Africa's, Michael Katz's. I got good counsel from National Treasury. I got good counsel from the chairman of KPMG, Professor Wiseman and Kuchlu, who had also had to deal with issues at KPMG. So the main thing was you need to outsource the decision making, because otherwise you can never do it yourself. Just the pressure gets too much, and I can only thank my board for being there the whole time to have these discussions and really deliberating it. And hindsight, we've made most of the decisions correctly, and that's really helpful. The biggest thing, I think, is that culture beats strategy every day. It's your people that are driving the business, but culture comes from the top down. It's not a bottom-up thing. So you have to have the right culture at the board, at the executive committee, in the leadership, to enable a business to drive doing the right business with the right people in the right way.
In many organizations, corruption often gets swept under the carpet. People often know what is going on but do nothing. As a new leadership team, our approach was to break that mold in terms of dealing with issues like this. We decided to lead with transparency and to take a deep dive into the challenges brought about by the previous management team. Sometimes when things appear to be at their darkest, you realize the resilience of the human spirit and how much stronger you are when you tackle things together, which really captures the essence of our efforts in stepping into unknown territory, embracing the challenges and trusting one another, our partners in the investigation and our people as we undertook this journey towards finding the light. To deal with the allegations and the business reorganization, we focused on 3 operational themes: creating more transparency on the business and the financials, creating a fit-for-purpose capital structure, and rebuilding our credibility through establishing robust governance. In terms of credibility, we focused on rebuilding the EOH credibility and reputation by addressing the corruption allegations and putting processes in place to protect the business. We facilitated the bedding down of an experienced King IV compliant board, as well as bringing in an entirely new management team comprising of very talented individuals who wanted to be part of this turnaround. We worked extremely hard to regain market trust by ensuring that the leadership kept all stakeholders abreast of details of the forensic investigation as it unfolded. It was this transparency with the board and the market in general that saved the 11,000 jobs. We committed to ensuring that EOH re-establishes its role as the preeminent South African provider of ICT products and solutions on the continent, and to ensure that EOH is well positioned to play a key role in society, with our ability to serve almost the full spectrum of client needs in both large private companies and the public sector as they navigate their way towards the 4th Industrial Revolution. Upon my arrival in 2019, a forensic investigation by ENS Forensics was already underway. ENS Forensics found evidence of a number of governance failings, including unsubstantiated payments, tender irregularities, and unethical business practices primarily limited to public sector businesses. All individuals implicated in the wrongdoing are no longer employed by the company, which included a group of EOH employees primarily from the public sector vertical team. EOH, with support from ENS, has fully cooperated and continues to engage with all authorities. From a liquidity perspective, we were deeply focused on creating a sustainable organization, deleveraging the business, understanding and managing our cost base, driving productivity, and ensuring we run an efficient working capital structure. This focus has come through in our results as our quality of earnings continues to improve together with our continual improvement in performance year on year. We even achieved an unqualified audit by one of our Big Four firms, PwC, in 2020. More recently, we are proud to say that at our recent interim results announcement, we were able to tell the market that we had delivered a profit following a successful turnaround. This last 6-month result enables us to achieve the next phase of progressing an optimal capital structure to catalyze investment in growth opportunities and consequently enhance our client value proposition. In terms of transparency, running in parallel to the ENS Africa investigations, EOH set about establishing a dedicated GRC and compliance team and has overseen the implementation of extensive enhancements to the compliance program and control environment to ensure that identified gaps and deficiencies are addressed. The changes included the following: a leadership commitment to anti-bribery and corruption compliance, the rollout of the comprehensive compliance policy framework, and the implementation of face-to-face dedicated anti-bribery and corruption training for employees, in addition to online training to the newly adopted Code of Conduct. We also retained ENS Africa, PwC, and the University of Stellenbosch Centre for Corporate Governance in Africa to support the implementation of the new risk governance framework to ensure an effective basis for the company to move forward. Up next, one of EOH's strategic advisors during the investigation, Martin Kingston, Chairman of Rothschild South Africa, Chairman of the Steering Committee of Business for South Africa, and at the time of the investigation was the Vice President of Business Unity South Africa, discusses the role that transparency played in the way EOH managed its legacy corruption issues.
My name is Martin Kingston. I'm the Chairman of Rothschild in South Africa. I'm also the Chairman of the Steering Committee of Business for South Africa, and at the time that we started working with EOH, I was the Vice President of Business Unity South Africa. When Stephen joined EOH at the very beginning as CEO, he asked me to come in and we discussed the fact that he felt intuitively that there were problems within the system, and we decided that we needed to open up the issues very transparently and indeed very aggressively, because Stephen, as an incoming CEO, had in fact the mandate to be able to do that. And of course what we found, the more that we peeled this onion, was the more rotten it was, and the need to be, as I said, very honest, very transparent and very comprehensive in dealing with the problem. And Stephen and his board, I have to say, didn't hold back from ensuring that all the necessary internal and external resources were deployed to try and understand just how pervasive and comprehensive the corruption and malfeasance had been. Well, EOH started this process in the middle of when we were having to deal with state capture in South Africa, and many very high-profile firms, international firms, had been associated with that, from KPMG and McKinsey to Bain and SAP. And the difference between EOH, I have to say, and the others was its willingness to step up to the plate and to grasp the nettle, to take ownership of the fact that there had been problems and there were problems within the business, and to arrest them as quickly as possible. What we learnt, of course, is that all you need is one bad apple, in fact, to poison the entire bunch. And that, I think, is what happened within EOH and many of the other companies concerned. Most importantly, Stephen was prepared to lead by example. He recruited a team of people whose integrity, commitment, and indeed, I have to say, their transparency was beyond reproach. He hired first-class external advisors, particularly the lawyers, to help him work through this. He made a clean breast of it to the authorities, and in that context he built real and fundamental trust with all of his stakeholders, and I think it has stood EOH in much better stead given the fact that there was such significant systemic corruption in the company. And many companies in South Africa who've been involved actually should take a leaf from the EOH book, because we found that there is a great reticence on the part of companies. Maybe they fear prosecution, maybe they fear an impact on their share price, but in fact the reputational damage that occurs if they don't acknowledge their role is even greater, in my opinion. And Stephen was a pathfinder in that regard, and I think has set a way forward for many of us, not just in South Africa, but further afield. We need to be able to promote whistleblowing, in particular, first and foremost, by protecting them, because they feel extremely vulnerable, and understandably so, specifically and particularly in South Africa, where the risks are very great that they are running. The companies and indeed the country needs to have a culture of openness, of honesty, of integrity, as I said before, and whistleblowers need to be actually encouraged in a system that enables them confidentially and sometimes anonymously to be able to inform the management, the leadership of the company concerned, without having to go to the authorities as to problems that exist within the company, without fear or favour as far as the whistleblowers or indeed the company itself is concerned. I think it takes a very long time for companies to recover their reputation. Reputations get built over decades and destroyed in a day. And what we've seen in the context of the corruption, malfeasance and maladministration in South Africa has been that the denial of the fact that there was wrongdoing that has taken place, or indeed continues to take place, undermines both individual and indeed corporate credibility and therefore reputation. And it takes a very long time to rebuild trust and confidence, both in the individuals, the executives, the boards, and indeed the companies concerned. So my view is very simple, that is, there is no option, having carefully considered all of the issues, but to make a clean breast of it and to actually hold people to account internally and externally, because ultimately society holds each and every one of us to account. EOH, in my opinion, is a case study of how one should deal with issues. A new management came in, it found out that there had been significant levels of corruption, maybe only a handful of individuals, but it had contaminated the entire company and indeed the perception of the company with radical ramifications for its employees, for its shareholders and for its stakeholders more broadly. And they have held the line over the last 3 years in prosecuting that approach, as I said, of integrity and transparency. And I think it is really a very good role model for other companies, both in South Africa and internationally.
Since embarking on its turnaround strategy, EOH has made great progress towards building a sustainable organisation whilst navigating the negative effects of the issues inherited from previous management as well as the impact of COVID-19. The near-term priority has been on improving EBITDA performance as well as the disposal of non-core units as part of a deleverage strategy while building a robust governance framework to enable the future growth of the business. Our business is now more focused and less complex, with our capital structure and cash generation improving. As we embark on this new phase in our evolution, following a period of consolidation, our emphasis is now on enhancing our value proposition and growing our core business from a top line and earnings perspective. We are well positioned to take advantage of the exponential shifts in the world today, which create an opportunity to be the most attractive digital transformation enabler throughout Africa and beyond. We continue to deliver on all our promises and ensure that EOH quality of earnings is retained. From May 2019 through to April 2022, we have seen a vast improvement in solidifying our governance framework. We continue as a board and as a management team to have zero tolerance for bribery and corruption. This can only happen if you have the right people and procedures in place. The team and the people have really come together in our Road to Green process. This is real testament to our EOH people and their character and ability for change. As we embarked on our turnaround strategy and strengthen our efforts to deal with the legacy issues from the past, the new EOH leadership team, along with the board and our strategic advisors, focused its efforts on actioning meaningful and sustainable changes. In this next clip, our current EOH chair of the board, Mr. Andrew Mthembu, talks about the importance of EOH leadership walking the talk.
It remains critical for a company's leadership and board to adhere to their fiduciary responsibilities, as credibility cannot be achieved without transparency and accountability. As a board, we realize the importance of supporting the CEO and leadership team in its efforts to uncover the full extent of the legacy corruption. This was done in order to hold accountable those who committed the wrongdoings and to ensure that they were brought to book. As a responsible corporate citizen, we also acknowledged that we needed to lead the way in terms of how we dealt with all our stakeholders and to ensure that at all times they were kept informed about how the process was unfolding. The current board of directors of EOH spent a significant amount of time rebuilding credibility through establishing a robust governance framework. This included creating more transparency within the business and ensuring the accuracy and reliability of the financial information disclosed to the market, whilst at the same time continuing to work through the remaining legacy issues that it inherited. EOH worked tirelessly to address the inherited legacy issues and to ensure that EOH is once again a respected name in the South African ICT sector. Upon receiving the ENS Africa report, the current board and leadership took the following actions. The ENS Africa report revealed evidence of a number of governance failings and wrongdoing at EOH. As a group, EOH was committed to ensuring that all perpetrators of wrongdoing are brought to justice. Following the outcome of the forensic investigation, the current board and leadership reported the concerns and the details of the parties implicated in the irregularities to the Directorate for Priority Crimes Investigation, better known as the Hawks. The company has also terminated the employment relationship with individuals who have been directly implicated in the identified wrongdoing. The suspicious transactions arising from the investigation were reported to the Financial Intelligence Center. The current board of directors agreed to pursue civil prosecutions against some of the perpetrators identified during the forensic investigation. The current EOH board and leadership will continue to act decisively in respect of any further wrongdoing that may be identified in the group. And this is as part of its business as usual, and also in line with its zero tolerance on corruption policy.
Some of the significant legal actions EOH has taken on its road to green were to comprehensively and strategically deal with and close out all of our legacy contracts identified as part of the forensic investigation. EOH then engaged with the SIU to settle overpayments received by EOH on 2 contracts in particular. EOH were requested by the Zondo Commission to present evidence on matters relating to state capture. These presentations happened during November 2020 and May 2021. In addition, EOH instituted civil action against the perpetrators and previous management to claim damages it suffered due to unlawful payment practices and harm caused to EOH's reputation. Although the actual costs incurred with ENS forensics surpassed 50 million rand, EOH incurred further costs as a direct and indirect consequence of the wrongdoings, that being enterprise development loans that we needed to write off, a JSC fine that we needed to settle, repayment to the SIU for contracts related to overbilling, massive legal fees, costs of specialized advisors, and the setting up of a GRC function and the consequent controls. We had massive enhancements in our finance function, and from a board of director engagement perspective, there was a lot of effort put into that. We estimate the aggregate amount of hard costs to be in excess of 231 million rand. However, in terms of the indirect revenue lost due to reputational damage and write-downs, the amount is likely to be between 500 and 1 billion rand. Man-hours spent on the investigation. From an external perspective, ENS Forensics have spent more than 11,000 man-hours on the investigation and engagements with regulatory authorities. From an internal resource perspective, we spent in excess of 100,000 man-hours on the investigation and cleaning up the consequences of wrongdoings. The investigation took management time away from focusing on the business and its growth. It also required collaboration across the group, and input was required from our legal, finance, and our risk and compliance team to manage the process. We also had to keep engaging our customers, employees, and shareholders on our progress and remediation plans, which was managed by our client-facing teams as well as our HR and comms functions. A dedicated project team was set up to manage and resolve the active legacy public sector contracts identified by the investigation as being a high risk. Legal teams have been mandated to recover damages suffered and defend claims by restricted suppliers. Furthermore, and following the conclusion of the investigation, we had the Zondo Commission during November 2020 and May 2021. As you may be aware, EOH provided assistance to the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into State Capture. Recently, we received acknowledgement by Judge Raymond Zondo in his 4th report to the President of South Africa on the outcome of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into State Capture. In his report, Judge Zondo said about EOH and our Chief Executive Officer, Stephen van Coller, there is no other company that has been of greater assistance to the Commission in relation to the investigation of historical wrongdoing within its ranks. The State Capture Commission's latest report, which details the goings-on in contracts between EOH and the City of Johannesburg, describes EOH as a unique case in that it was alone among all of the companies mentioned in proceedings that approached the State Capture Commission proactively to be given the opportunity to disclose publicly what wrongdoing had taken place historically within its ranks. This was truly a proud day for all of us at EOH to receive this accolade, and we remain committed as a group to transparency with a firm commitment to continue our ethical corporate citizenship. We will also continue to shine a light on the critical importance of standing up for what is right and in supporting the efforts to remove the scourge of corruption in our country. When the new leadership team joined EOH, we found a group of really talented individuals and an organization with exceptional promise that had been shattered by the actions of a few. As we began to rebuild, one of our priorities was to energize our governance, risk and compliance function. We needed to build systems, processes and teams that would allow us not only to recover our credibility, but to future-proof the organization against unethical practices and embed a culture that would support the highest standards of integrity and ethics. As we picked up the pieces and rebuilt a proud EOH, people and technology came together in a distinctive way to create a GRC function that we believe has tremendous potential to empower and protect people. With these new policies, tools and controls in place, we have witnessed a fundamental change in the way the company is being run at every level. After all the work that has been done to instill an ethos of courageous leadership and to deal effectively with the legacy of the past, we have ended up with a committed, courageous team and a set of internally built technology-enabled tools that has empowered our talented GRC people to do their jobs effectively, creatively and without fear. One of the fundamental issues we need to grapple with as leaders, and certainly as a society, is that rules, guidelines and code of ethics are not enough to prevent the staggering levels of corruption and deviation from ethical standards that we are seeing not only in South Africa, but around the world. The world is very different today, and the only way to future-proof your business is if you grow ethically and sustainably, and to be transparent both with your customers as well as with your staff and your communities. As Stephen mentioned, we have been through a tough period, but it has provided a necessary burning platform, and we have not let this crisis go to waste. Allow me to share some of the many lessons we have learned. Businesses aren't corrupt, people are. Corruption is instigated, normalized and practiced by individuals who have made the choice to be corrupt. If you don't have a culture of doing the right things in the right way, with the right customers, you're finished. Combating that culture of corruption can revive a business. Complex corporate structures are at particular risk of corrupt practices. Complexity is sometimes explicitly implemented to obscure. The solution is accountability and transparency, and the separation of crucial roles to avoid conflicts of interest. Limited governance and compliance are early indicators of possible corruption. The governance structure is also reflective of executive culture, which is even more important. Checks and balances are vital and should be established in 3 layers. Frontline employees, a compliance and an internal audit function, and external audit as second and third lines of defense. Board independence is crucial. South Africa has a world-class governance guideline in our King Code, and its implementation really makes a difference to oversight. Make sure the board meetings are happening properly. Quality of minutes and presentation packs are very quick indicators of how well these guidelines are being adhered to. Make it easy for whistleblowers. This is the one thing that really saved us. It's not good enough just to get information from whistleblowers. It must be actionable. We developed the Expose It whistleblowing app, which allows you to do more than get something off your chest. It allows you to build a case. It is very important for there to be visible action and two-way communication. It's a courageous thing whistleblowers are doing, and they need to feel supported, valued and protected. Do not use middlemen. They are a risk, as you cannot control what they are doing when they are representing your brand. Today, if you are using middlemen, you are using the wrong business model. Furthermore, South African legislation refers to this as fronting, and it is illegal. If you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing. If you compromised once, you eternally compromised. What has kept us going at EOH is the realization that 99% of people truly want to do the right thing. People want to subscribe to a moral code that makes them feel good and worthy. Everyone in the business needs to be accountable for delivery of their bit. Not only is it best practice for employee satisfaction, it also ensures the right culture from the top. As mentioned previously, one of our approaches in terms of future-proofing the business was to strengthen GRC at EOH. We appointed a small team of committed, experienced people, provided them with an ecosystem of digital tools that gave them exponential reach and effectiveness, and then used those tools to embed a culture of ownership, engagement, and responsibility across the organization. Since the group had also been saddled with debt and we did not have the luxury of building a GRC function by immediately appointing several large teams, in the end, this proved a really valuable opportunity and became one of our strengths. Because we were a small team, we had to be able to work across silos. And because we couldn't handle all the data processing manually, we had to find digital solutions. Embedding GRC within our culture requires more than robust systems. We needed meaningful organisation-wide training in compliance. The EOH culture is very much centred on continuous learning in a way that relies on technology. We met people in that space, making use of robotics and gamification to craft an engaging learning platform. The result was over 97% uptake of our GRC training across the organisation. That speaks for itself. The toolbox that the developers and system engineers across EOH created allows the technology to do what it does best, which was not to replace people, but to enable people. We let the machines gather information, record, consolidate, and simplify it, which then freed us to do what humans do best, which is to think creatively, engage, analyze, and plan. This toolbox has evolved into a GRC as a service ecosystem, a suite of solutions that together enable and empower GRC processes to run more efficiently. We now have a fully integrated GRC ecosystem that can also be applied across diverse organizations in a modular fashion. We have been given a single view of what's happening across a large and a diverse group of companies. A system like this enables better assurance and creates comfort for all. You know where the pain points are and where the problems lie. We have also managed to embed a deep sense of accountability, both at a leadership level and at an employee level. And by automating regulatory and legislative requirements that were manual and time-consuming, we've also seen significant savings in time and money. EOH is now firmly on our road to green, which is what we call our journey towards a verifiable, meaningful, lived compliance with high ethical standards at every level of the organization. We believe this approach to GRC is a game-changing model, which provides a shining light in guiding all of our efforts towards building an ethically driven, values-based culture for our organization and for our continued work in the public and private sector. In terms of the public sector, we have introduced a playbook to guide our sales teams in terms of their engagements and to ensure that there is the appropriate governance structures and support in place to ensure that we always do business in the right way and with the right people. If it weren't for the courage, perseverance, and fortitude of whistleblowers, we would not have been able to undertake and complete this journey. I pay tribute to them for their bravery and remind us all about the critical role they play in lifting the veil on corruption globally. They need to be protected, supported, and celebrated. Having completed our turnaround strategy and put our legacy issues behind us, we believe we have a solid foundation for future growth. Although this was a tough journey, we needed to go through it as a team. And together we rallied around a future vision for ourselves that could be built by adopting a solve mindset. We continue as a board and as a management team to have zero tolerance for bribery and corruption. And this can only happen if you have the right procedures and the right people in place. This really is a continual improvement program. And as a team and people, we have really come together on our road to green process. Our turnaround speaks for itself, and it is a real testament to the EOH people and their character and ability to be agile and to adapt. Our past is behind us. EOH is now back in the black, and we are ready to go get our future. Finally, in this last video, Alan Pullinger, CEO of the First Rand Group, talks about the client perspective of the legacy corruption issues at EOH.
Hi, I'm Alan Pullinger, First Rand CEO. Yeah, I mean, I guess like many South Africans and taxpayers, we were, deeply disappointed. I suppose what made it worse is EOH was at one point in time was the darling of the market. So, listed, lots of investors had climbed into the EOH story. It seemed like a really good story. It had continued for some time. It was one of the hot stocks, if you like, in the market. And I guess, that all came down. So it wasn't just the corruption, but it was also the investment proposition and the story, which I think disappointed so many people. A lot of people lost money in the business, that had invested in the shares. And then I guess, one always, hears an issue around fraud, and, one hopes it's contained. Maybe it's a minor issue, it's sort of blown out of proportion. But I guess as more and more detail came out, and the extent of it, I think it was deeply disappointing. Well, EOH is, I mean, it's one of the big service providers, you know, to I think all of the big banks, you know, and certainly a long-standing service provider to the First Rand Group and to FNB, I guess in particular. You know, of course we had to stand back. We had to really think about what was going on here. I remember some early conversations that we had with Stephen. And you know, how did we take that forward? You know, we asked for, you know, full accountability. Please keep us informed of what's going on. You know, I guess we really didn't want any more surprises. You know, we pushed quite hard to say, you know, has the worst come out? You know, is the business, is the board taking the stuff seriously? I guess we held, you know, Stephen's feet to the fire. We were very open, we were candid with Stephen. You know, we said it's a great business, it's provided great services to us, but if this thing doesn't get back on the right track, if we don't see the right steps being taken, you know, we're going to have no choice but to walk away. You know, we simply can't continue with that relationship. So we pushed Stephen hard, and I must say he was really good, meeting with the team, coming out, sharing the plans. He told us when, you know, further public announcements were going to be made. Of course, we followed a lot of that progress in the press and the own statements that EOH put out, and we were comfortable that it looked like there was remediation taking place. I guess what helped in the conversation is I knew Stephen and you know, a lot of the senior executives knew Stephen from his banking days, so he wasn't an unknown quantity for us. You know, we really kind of knew the character of the individual, you know, that we were speaking to. We also knew that, of course, Stephen had, you know, he had no incentive but to absolutely clean up. You know, his prospects, you know, lie in the new EOH, and he's got nothing to do with the old EOH. So we knew he was going to follow a particular approach. We knew he was going to turn over all the rocks. And we could see it, you know, we could see it in a refresh of the board. We could see, you know, a new sort of corporate governance policy being published by the business, you know, code of ethics. There was a lot of change that we could see in the organization. And then, of course, you know, EOH, you know, really did pitch up at the Zondo Commission, and they received very high praise from the Chief Justice, and there wasn't a lot of praise that has been dished out to, you know, to corporates in the 4 volumes that have been published so far. But EOH was singled out, you know, and really stood out, I think, head and shoulders around the way they approached the commission, the degree of transparency, the unpack. I think they've spoken very candidly. The stuff EOH themselves have done, you know, around purging themselves of the people, you know, that caused all these problems for them. They've launched their own legal proceedings against them to try and recover shareholder money, you know, and perhaps money that is due back to the state for some of these projects. So, I mean, I guess when you really stand back, it's not that fraud happens in an organization and that's the end of it. It can happen to any organization, and certainly, you know, when all of this stuff has happened, you know, we haven't sat back and gloated. You know, we've asked ourselves, okay, in our own organization, are we sure we haven't got this stuff? How do we know we haven't got it? And the issue is not that it doesn't happen. As I said, it's more about when it happens, what do you do? And here I can really say, I think EOH does set an example, I think, for corporate South Africa. You know, there are few corporates that have really gone to the extent that EOH has to kind of tidy up the mess, put it to bed, making sure it's transparent, making sure there aren't further surprises coming out. And as tough as it is now for EOH, there's no doubt that organisation is going to emerge a lot stronger and a lot more ethical, I think, than probably it ever was.
Thank you for your time. We will now take questions.